On today's episode of The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, I'll be making some waves. Today it's going to be a full edit using the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. You don't want to miss this one. There'll be some free PDF notes for you to download as well. Stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Can you believe it? It is TK Friday again. These TK Fridays come up so quick every week, and I love them, and I hope you do too. Today we'll be working on this image of some waves. This was shot in Hong Kong, and I'm excited about working on this one. And don't forget to download the PDF notes and follow along with me. I recommend that you watch the video first, and then you'll have those notes as a reference to use as a practice guide. By the way, if you don't yet own the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, you can click on my affiliate link found in the description below this video. Just click on that link. It'll take you to the TK web store where you can purchase the TK8 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. And if you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% off your entire purchase. And when you do that, you're supporting the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And for that, I truly thank you. And I also forgot to mention, you got to download the image. That's going to be found in my Dropbox link in the description below this video. Make sure you click on that Show More to open up the description. Sometimes people say, I can't find the notes, I can't find the image. Well, you got to click that Show More to open up the YouTube description. Don't forget that. I started this image edit out in Lightroom. I just did some basic edits on it. I used the linear profile. Just minor adjustments here. I did not add much contrast at all to it. It's pretty flat going into Photoshop. And I like to do it this way because my first move in Photoshop is to use the balance and contrast that you see me doing all the time in my TK Friday videos with the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. So we're going to do that first. Now here we are in Photoshop. The first thing I want to do is come up to the TK8 multi-mask panel and click on this button right here for Luminosity Masks. And I'll go ahead and click on Mids 3. And I always use a Mids 3 because it protects my highlights and shadows from clipping. I'll apply that to a color grading tool, so I'll click on the color grading button. I'll start out by adjusting the midtones, so I'll click on this midtone block. And we're just going to open up those midtones to somewhere maybe right around here. I don't want to go too crazy here. I'm going to click on the shadow block and let's just darken up the shadows, adding a little bit of extra contrast here. Maybe a smidge more, maybe like that. And let's go to highlights, and I'm just going to pull the highlight slider slightly to the right, maybe right about there. Let's take a look. Here is the before, and here is the after. And I just love this first step because I think it gives me a really nice starting place. I'm going to click on the shadow block again and just take this black square and drag it slightly into the blue, just a little wee bit, something like that, just to put a hint of blue in the shadow areas. Now don't forget, this is a color grading tool, so you can adjust color grades with it. You can color grade shadows, midtones, and highlights. It's a really powerful and very easy to use tool. Plus you also have adjustments for the luminosity values of shadows, midtones, and highlights. Now, the way my editing philosophy works is this. After I do this balance and contrast, I really look at the image and study it and look for something that's really sticking out that says I need to be changed. And when I look at this image, I look at the water and I say, this water is too dark. I need to lighten up this water to bring it into balance with this scene. Right now, the color grading tool is covering over the multi-mask panel, so let's go ahead and click the X. We don't lose any adjustment when we do that. Now, to lighten this water, normally what I would do would be to get a curves adjustment layer, put a black mask on it to hide the adjustment, and click on this screen blend mode button, and that way I would be able to lighten up the image, but I wouldn't see what was happening. I'm doing it a different way today. That's the way I normally do it, but today I'm going to do it the old school way where I put a adjustment inside of a group just to show you something a little bit different. And I still do this method because I like it as well. But what I'll do is click on the Luminosity Mask button right here. And I need to find a mask that'll work with this water. And I think this lights one will work. But I need to refine it a bit. So I'm going to click on the Levels adjustment. And I'll start out by taking this shadow slider and start to drag it to the right just to tighten up the selection. You see that? I want to get this water isolated. I'm going to take the mid-tone slider and start to drag it to the left to lighten up that water, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to take the highlight slider and drag it to the left to lighten it up even more. And I think that gives me a pretty nice looking mask separating the water from the rocks. And now I need to output this mask. I'm going to output it to a curves adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on the curves adjustment button. And I'm going to put it in the screen blend mode. Just come up to your combo or CX panel and click on this SCR for screen. That's in a screen blend mode. Okay, now that's lightening up all the light areas of the image, which I don't want. But here's the old school method. Come to this group icon where you could put your adjustment in a group. Click on the left side, which will put it into a group with a black mask hiding the adjustment. And then we'll simply paint on the adjustment. But let's take a look and see what we got here. See, here's the group with the black mask, and here is the mask that I made. So when I paint on this group, this mask is controlling what I'm doing. So I'm not just painting raw paint on here, and that's what's going to reveal what's underneath, but this mask is really protecting areas. So I'm going to start out with a white brush. So you can click this button right here to get yourself a white brush. I'm going to start out with about 20% opacity on a nice soft brush. So I'm just typing my 2 key. That's a shortcut for 20% opacity. And if you like using flow, you can use flow as well. And then all I'm going to do is just hand paint lightness. Every time I lift my brush, I'll add a little bit more paint. And you can vary the size of your brush. And this is where you can kind of create here. What areas do you want to see a little lighter? You can hit them several times. And so I'm just coming down in here and lightening up little areas. I'm going to come in here, over in here, hit this a couple times, come in here. Now remember that mask is protecting me from those rocks. I'm going to get that a little bit lighter. Let's lighten this up a little bit more in here. Sorry, I went away from the microphone. I get excited. And let's lighten this up down through here a little bit. It's protecting these shadows in the water because I'm only targeting lighter tones. I'll come back and deepen shadows later, but you know, it's a step-by-step process, right? And I'll make my brush a little bit smaller and come up into here and lighten this area up in here. I like this up here. Isn't this a beautiful little image? Not a little image, but it's a beautiful image. I really like it. And this is kind of dodging in a way, but I'm just lightening up that whole area. But this brush is letting me control where I want it to go. So I'm being the artist here. I'm doing the creation here. Now let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. And every time I do an edit, if I do this again, they always come out differently. It depends how you feel and what your mind is thinking and how you're going to interpret this image. No artificial intelligence here. It's only up in your own head that is causing things to happen. And that's where the fun really is, the joy of editing. Now, let's click on this adjustment layer. And we have a curve here, right? So I think this needs to be a little lighter. The screen blend mode didn't quite do it for me. So I'm just going to click right here in the middle and just drag up a little bit. And you see how I can just lighten it up even more. So that's kind of nice. We have that extra ability with this curves adjustment. Here's the before and here's the after. And I think that's a good starting point. One thing about this process, after you have a bunch of layers here, you can always come back and readjust things and balance things out. I'm going to go ahead and close this group. And now I think I'll darken the shadow areas in the water. And to do that, I'll do this old school mask the mask way again. So we'll come up to the Luminosity Mask button and give it a click. And this time I think I'm going to go with darks 1. And now I'm targeting dark tones, and now I need to refine that. So click on the levels adjustment, and I'm going to take this shadow slider and start to drag it to the right just to really isolate the shadow areas and remove some of those highlighted areas. Somewhere around here, I'll drag the midtone slider to the right just to tighten this up even more to maybe right about there. And I'll take the highlight slider and drag it to the left to lighten up those areas. All the light areas that you see are the shadows here. I'm going to play with this midtones just to make sure I'm getting this good. I don't want to lose anything here. Maybe I'll tighten it up just a little wee bit more. I think that is good. And now I'm going to output it to a curves adjustment layer again. This time I'm going to use a multiply blend mode to darken it. And that darkens everything up, as you can see. A lot of the image gets darkened up. Of course, the mask is controlling that. We're going to put it in a black group again, so click the left side of the group button. That puts it in a black group, and now we can paint on our adjustment. And again, we need a white brush. I already have it. I'm going to use that 20% opacity and just start painting on some of the shadow areas just to darken them up, just to add some dimension and depth to this image. This is basically burning right here, and you decide where you want it to go. What do you think? Like this wave up here. I'm just going to grab some of this stuff here. I'm going to go fast here, but you got to take your time and get it right. I'm making a tutorial, so sometimes I may miss something or whatever. I would like to spend a lot of time on here and really enjoy myself and look at those shadow areas and say, which ones need to be darker. Now remember, every time you lift that brush and then you repaint, you're going to add a little bit more darkness. I could do this all day, but I think I'll stop for now. Let's take a look. Here's the before and now the after. I think we're okay at this point, but take your time and get it right. The next thing I want to do is just lighten up the midtones, and this is something I like to do a lot, and it's really easy to do. What we need to do is come up and click on this Luminosity Mask button, but I want to show you something right now. We have a group here. Whatever I output here will get inside this group, and I don't want it, and a lot of times I forget to do that. But I'm going to show you something you can do, and I showed you this in my hidden feature video. I'm going to click on the Luminosity Mask button, and then we're going to use a Mids 1 just to target the midtones. I'm going to output this to a curves adjustment layer, and I'll put it in the screen blend mode. But if you remember, if you hold your Control or Command key down and click on this, it'll put this adjustment on the top of the layer stack. So let me do that. And as you can see, it goes up there. If I wouldn't have held down the Control or Command key, I hold down the Command because I'm on a Mac, it would have put it inside that group, which would have not been good. Now, we don't see any change here until I click on this Screen button. So let's click Screen, and now we just lighten up the midtones. Let's take a look. Here's the before, and here's the after. It's a nice, subtle adjustment, but very effective. And I find every now and then when you're editing, things sometimes seem a little dark for you, and this is something you can do. And don't forget, you have the opacity. If it's too strong, you can always pull back the opacity adjustment. This is a non-destructive workflow that we're doing here, so we can go back and tweak any of the layers at any time if we need to. Now, when I look at the image, I look at the sky and I think it looks a little too light. I want to just darken it down just a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to make a sky selection. I'll use Photoshop to do that. I'll click this button right here in the combo panel, and that'll allow Photoshop to select the sky. And now we can come up here to My Channels and click on this button and click on Active Selection. Now, I want to attach a midtones 3 mask here to protect shadows and highlights from clipping. It's something I always like to do. And to do that, I'll get the mask calculator. So click on the mask calculator button. Click on X for an intersection. Very simple and easy to do. Click on this X. And now we get back to the multi-mask panel. Now we can click on this Luminosity Mask button again and choose a midtones 3. All we need to do now is make that calculation by clicking on the equal sign. And now we've applied that midtones 3 only to the sky. And now I'm going to output this to a color grading tool by clicking this color grading tool button. I usually like to start with midtones, so click on the midtone block, and I'm just going to drag it to the left watching that sky just to darken it up a little bit. And I'm going to click on the shadow block and drag it a little bit to the left. That doesn't really do much of anything. You could probably leave that one out, but let's take a look. Here is the before. And here's the after. We could add a color grade to that sky if we want to. So on your own, you can experiment by dragging these pucks around. I would recommend clicking on the midtone block and drag it around if you wanted to warm it up more or add some magenta to it, whatever you want to do. But you could play with that. I'm going to leave mine just the way it is. Again, here is the before and here's the after. Now, if you went too strong, you could take this opacity and start to pull it back. A lot of times what I like to do is take it the whole way off and then just start dragging it up slowly. And when it gets to the point that I like it, which in this case, I like it 100%, you'll notice on my notes that I drug it down to 80% because I think I darkened my midtones a little bit more on that one, but I think I got it right this time. But you always have that opacity to fall back on. Let's see where we've come from. If you hold your Alt or Option key down and click on the background layer, you can see the before. Wow, what a difference, huh? And here's the after. Man, we are moving in the right direction. I also made myself a before-after action button so I could click this and I could see the before and then the after. I made a video on how to make a before and after action button, and I believe I also even have that before after action that you can download for free on that video. I'll try to remember to add that to the end of this video where you could just click on the link and go and watch that video. As I study the image, these rocks up here in the foreground, lower left side, are really too light in my opinion, so I need to darken them. I'm going to use an object selection tool, so click on your object selection tool. Make sure you're in the lasso mode, and we're just going to lasso really quickly right around this entire rock and see if it gets it. This is the AI in Photoshop at work, and yeah, I think we got a pretty good selection. Now, I want to make a mask that only targets the darker tones of the rock, kind of staying away from the lighter tones, protecting them somewhat. And you can see I have my selection with the selection indicator, and we don't need to see the color grading tool, so let's click on the X. Let's click on My Channels, and let's click on the active selection. Now I need to do a mask calculation, so click on the mask calculator, and we're going to do an intersection, so click on the X. Now we'll get a luminosity mask, so click the X here, and now click on the luminosity mask button, and let's try some darks. Let's try darks 1. Okay, I need more isolation. Let's try darks 2. That's getting better. Let's try darks 3. That's even better. Now, I'm going to refine it by using the levels. You could use curves as well, but I like levels. It's pretty easy. Click on the levels button. I'll start with the shadow slider and start to drag it to the right just to tighten things up. Maybe right about there. I'll drag the midtone slider to the right just to tighten things up a little bit more. And we'll drag the highlight slider to the left to maybe somewhere right about here. And all the light areas are what will get the adjustment. And now I need to make the calculation by clicking on the equals. And now we can see I only have the rocks, and the light areas are what will be adjusted. And now I'll put this to a curves adjustment layer, and let's put it in the multiply blend mode to darken. And now you can see the rocks are darker. So let's check this out. Here's the before and here's the after. So it just darkens up the darker tones. And now as I continue to study the image, I think these lighter areas on the rocks, I'd like to bring a little more warmth out to them. So here's what I'll do. Grab that object selection tool again. I'm just going to lasso around these rocks again really quickly to make a really fast selection. And I got that selection. I'm going to come up to My Channels, click on active selection, mask calculator, X for intersect, X out of here, click on this X, click on the luminosity mask button again, and this time I'm going to try midtones 3. And yeah, I think midtones 3 targets those areas really well, but I need to refine it, so let's click on the levels adjustment to refine. I'm going to drag the shadow slider to the right to really isolate those lighter areas, and I think maybe somewhere right about there. Take the midtones and tighten it up a little more, drag it to the right a little bit to maybe right about there, and then lighten up those areas by dragging the highlight slider to the left. Okay, and I think somewhere right around there should be good. And now let's output this to, well, we got to make a calculation. I got ahead of myself. Click on the equals to make the calculation, and now we can see. Now that edge doesn't look real good there, but I'm going to show you a little trick to fix that, because we'll get some halos and bleed over there. Let's output this to a color grading tool by clicking on the color grading button. I'm going to click on the midtone block, and I'm just going to lighten those up slightly, give them some warmth. I'm going to drag this gray square up until about here. See how that just warms them up? Really nice, actually. Here's the before and here's the after. I'll zoom in for you on the video so you can see there are some halos along this edge here. But all we need to do is click on the mask, get a black brush, so click on this icon right here, this button for the brush. Go to 100% opacity, type your 0 key, make sure your hardness is at 0%. And all I'm going to do is paint on that mask. And I'm just going to paint like this and just paint those halos right off the edge there. It just totally gets rid of them. With that nice soft edge brush, everything will just blend nicely on the edges there. But that's all I really need to do, and it'll get rid of any of the halos on that edge. So that's a nice little tip for you. And now let's take a look. Here is the before and the after. So a nice little warming on those lighter areas on the rock. And don't forget, you always have your opacity slider that you can pull back. I like to lighten up some of the highlights in the water here, so I'm going to use dodging to do that. And so I'm going to X out of this color grading tool. Let's go to the Luminosity Masks. Click on this button right here for Luminosity Masks. I think Lights 1 should do the job. And I'm just going to go right to a dodge tool. Now the dodge tool has two sides. The right side is a blank pixel layer, and the left side is a 50% gray layer. I like it because I can see what I'm doing better if I, just want to look at the actual dodging itself. So I like this. Plus, if I want to blend, it's easy to blend with a gray brush. I'll click the left side 50% gray layer in the overlay blend mode. And it outputs it. As you can see, we have a selection here, and you don't see it here because the selection's hidden, but it's only targeting light tones. So I'll be painting through a selection. Now, I'm going to start out, I think, at 10% opacity with a very soft edge brush. So I'm going to type my 1 key, and I'm just looking for highlight areas. And I'm just going to dodge over these highlight areas. Every time, again, as I lift my brush, I'll be adding more. And if you feel the effect's not going down strong enough, you can go ahead and up your opacity if you feel you need it. Okay, so up in here. I'm not going to touch the sky. I think the sky looks really good, so I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm going to come up in here and lighten this up here. I think this little area in here, maybe lighten up into here. The front part of this wave splash, isn't that pretty? The power of a wave is totally amazing to me. But I really love this image, shot in Hong Kong. Now I can make my brush a little bit larger and kind of blend a little bit in here, lighten up this area. I'm also going to come up in this rock and look for some highlights that I can get here as well. Like here. And again, take your time. When you have a lot of time at home, you don't have any clock that you're trying to race against. So you just go ahead and do what you need to do. Here's the before, and here is the after. And now I could take a gray brush, and you can get that gray brush if you click on the Combo 6 panel, the gray brush. And it's still at 10%, and I can blend a little bit. So like, if an area is, like if I have an area it's not smooth enough, I can just kind of paint over that with some gray and just kind of blend that in, because gray will actually do some erasing. So if you need to blend some things out, that gray brush is really something. I think I'll make that brush a little larger and just kind of blend this up in here. So it's blending really nice. But again, take your time. Now here's what I mean. If you Option or Alt click on this eye right here, you can actually see the mask that you painted. You see that? And that's why I like the gray. It's easy to see. If that was on a blank pixel layer, you'd have a real hard time seeing what you're painting on. Option click it again, and you'll get back to the image. Again, one more time, here's the before, and here is the after. And remember, you have this opacity that you can pull back if it's too strong. Usually after I dodge, I like to burn. And so let's go ahead and do this again. Let's come up to Luminosity Mask. Now you'll notice I have a selection, but as soon as I click on the Luminosity Mask button, that selection goes away. Now I'm going to target dark tones. Let's try Darks 1. Let's try Darks 2. I think Darks 2 will be good because it's really isolating those shadows. Now just like the Dodge tool, the Burn tool has two sides. The left side 50% gray. The right side is a blank pixel layer, so I'll click on the left side. Now I'm still at 10% opacity, and I'm painting through a selection, so it's targeting just the darker tones. And now I'll make my brush a little smaller, and let's just bring out some of these darker tones in here. Just like that. And again, take your time, because you know what? Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. And I'm making a video, I gotta go kind of fast, so you gotta forgive me here, because I don't have that luxury of the time, because number one, you would get tired of watching me do this. So, but just look for those little areas, and it really makes a big difference when you get these guys. Let's take a look. Here's the before, and here's the after. Let me get some more up in here and in here. Over in here some more. And I could go to 20% opacity if I felt I wasn't getting that strong enough. So let's just give this rock some darkness here. Maybe in this water. Make this a little darker in here. Like that. And don't forget, you always have this gray brush. You can click on it. And with this gray brush, I'm going to type my 1 key, go down to 10%, and kind of blend these areas so everything is nice and smooth and looks natural. But you'll find this gray brush will really come in very, very handy. Now here's the before, and here's the after. And I think we're good for now. I'm going to leave it at that. But I would spend a lot more time in this, but I think you get the idea, so we'll leave it at that. And now we're almost done. But how do you know when you're done Well, I would say you know when you're done when nothing is speaking to you from this image. If you don't see any issues in it or any things that you want to really bring out and draw your viewers' attention to, then I say you're done. And remember, you can save this out as a PSD or a TIFF file with layers intact and always come back and keep working on it. What I want to do next is just kind of warm up some of these highlights on the rock here. And to do that, I'm going to use a paint contrast. So click on the paint contrast action. And we're going to sample a color in here, like maybe right here. And this is the color right there, but I want to lighten it up and give it a little more saturation. So I'm going to come up into around here and click. I'll try 20% opacity, and I just type my 2 key and just paint on some of these areas in here. I'll make my brush a little smaller, just to, bring out a little bit of extra warmth in there. That brings up the color with that paint contrast because I chose that different color in there. And just kind of paint on some of these areas. This is not a real big thing, and you could leave this step out if you want to, but I thought it would look nice. And so I'm just going to paint some of that in just like so, maybe over in here. Let's take a look. Here is the before. It's going to be subtle, and here is the after. So it just warms up those highlights a little bit. When I get near the end of an edit, I really like to come to these actions, especially the color actions. If you have enough room in your desktop, I like to have my CX combo opened all the time for actions. And I showed you how to do that in that hidden features video, how to keep it open and not close after you choose an action. So it makes it really convenient. And again, at the finishing touches, I like to try some of these color actions. And I ended up liking Soft Pop the best, but I think I tried Make It Glow first, but I really liked what the Soft Pop was doing. So let's click on Soft Pop and we'll let that action run. And now here it is. And I really like it, but I don't like it so much in the sky. Here's the before and here's the after. So let me show you how we can take care of the sky. If you come up and click on the sky selection button, you'll select the sky. The artificial intelligence of Photoshop will do that for you. And now what we can do is click this button right here, and we'll add that sky selection to a layer mask. So click that. It's the opposite of what I want, so just click the invert button right here and you will invert it. Now here's another little trick, and a lot of people forget about this one. If you go to your properties panel and click on the mask icon, you could take the density and start to drag this to the left and just add a little bit of that soft pop in there. And I think at about like 80%, yes, 80%. See how that gets a little bit on the gray side there? Lets a little bit of that soft pop in the sky, but not the full amount. Here's the before and here's the after. Now, I have one final thing to show you, and I'm zoomed into this rock. And it always pays to really examine your images up close to see if you have any halos or anything like that. Can you see the little halo around here? Now, believe it or not, this halo was caused by my initial topaz denoising. It adds a little bit of sharpness to it, and it puts a little bit of a halo around here. Maybe that soft pop caused it to come out a little bit more here, but I'll show you how to simply and easily get rid of that. This would be the last thing you do in your workflow. So what you're going to do is have to stamp all your layers together, and you see this button right here. Click on this button to stamp your layers. Stamps them all together. Now you want to get your clone stamp tool. Just type your S key, that's your shortcut. You want to make sure with the clone stamp tool, now it's way too big. Make a nice small clone stamp tool, like about that size right there, and change this blend mode to darker color. And what you're going to do is just sample close to the edge here. Hold your Alt or Option key down, depending if you're on a Mac and or a PC, and click and sample, and then all you have to do is this. Paint across there, and that halo will simply, you have to resample different points, but that halo will simply go right away. See, I'm resampling here. And just go along the whole edge like that, and you will get rid of it. Here's a little piece right here I missed. And I'll come along here. But you get the idea, but just do that. It doesn't take that long, and it looks really good when you're done. But that's it. Now let's go back to full screen again. And let's see where we've come from. I'll use my before-after action. Here's the before, and now here is the after. Well, I think it came a long way, and I'm really happy with this edit. Now, I have one more bonus feature for you, and you're going to like this. And this comes courtesy of Tony Kuiper. When I was showing him my edit the other day, he said, try this, Dave, at the very end of your edit. And I'm going to start incorporating this to all my edits. I start with balance and contrast, and I'm going to end with this, and I'll show you. And Tony says, try the color Loom action. And basically what this action is, it's a black and white adjustment layer set to the luminosity blend mode, but it targets all the different colors of your image. Maybe not all the colors, but a lot of them. Reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. So if you want to lighten up your reds, drag the red slider to the right, and you can lighten up your reds or darken them down. So you could kind of like make some final tweaks on the different colors. Let's try the yellow. See, I can go way strong there and make it look horrible, but I might just want to lighten up that yellow in there just a little bit. Not much green in here or cyan. There might be a little bit of cyan in the sky. Let's try blues. Yeah, a little bit of blues up there. Maybe I'll lighten up that blue a little bit and something like that. Here's the before and here's the after. It's subtle, but I think it's a good finishing touch, and I'll try to remember this to always incorporate this as my last touch of my edit. Let me know in the comment section below if you think this is a good thing to add at the end of your edit. I mean, you could use it anywhere in the edit, to be honest with you, but I think it's a good final touch. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. And don't forget to leave comments and questions. I'd love to hear from you. I just wanted to point out something on my PDF notes that you'll download for this image. I do not have that final step in there because that came after the fact. Well, there it is, everyone. Another TK Friday comes to a close. I hope you really enjoyed this full edit tutorial. If you enjoyed the tutorial today, please give it a like and give it a share. And also, if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please subscribe and click that bell notification icon. Every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get a notification. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing!